Good morning. My name is Thad Austin. I'm one of the pastors here at First Methodist Church, and it is indeed a pleasure to have you here with us today for a cooking demonstration with Mitchell Murfphree. For the past few weeks, our church has been involved in a series of sermons that have been themed around enough. So what is enough for us? Last week, our congregation, we bagged 1.5 tons of rice for the hungry in our community, which was enough for them. And so now this week, just to let you know how everything ties together, the idea is for Mitchell to come and to give us some ideas around seasonal recipes that can be enough for our families. As you'll already notice, there is a video feed live up here. So if you'd like to see kind of an overhead view of anything that Mitchell is preparing today, just look up. We will also provide a copy of the video along with the recipe instructions on our website. It might take about a week for us to get that up on the website, but if you've given us your email address through the registration table, I'll make sure that we send out a link to all of Mitchell's demonstration so you can be apprised of that. If you need the restrooms, there's a men's restroom just over here in this corner. The ladies' restroom is right over here, and we've got some refreshments in the back. I want you to know that Mitchell has been very generous with his time, and that your donations today are going to be used not to pay for the food that you will enjoy. Mitchell is donating his time and also bringing in a crew to allow you to sample all of the dishes that he will be demonstrating. So before the end of the day, you'll have an opportunity to do that. So your donations instead will be used to help pay off the debt on our 45-passenger bus here at the church, and we feel very confident that we can have that completely paid off by the end of this year. So we're very excited about that. But I do want you to know that the donations aren't going to 5 senses, they aren't going to Mitchell. He's donating his time, and we're very grateful for that. Let's begin with a word of prayer. God, we are so thankful that you are indeed enough for us in every season and situation in life. And Lord, we're thankful that we can come together and learn about different recipes that we can share with our families or loved ones. God, we pray that you would bless this church and bless this time that we spend together. For we pray it all in Jesus' name. Amen. Would y'all help me welcome Mitchell Murfphree?
Thank you. That's really good with that microphone. See how this works here. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I'm excited to be here. As Thad said, when we talked about this tying in with enough, we were excited. And what we're going to do today, we're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to cook. When we're going through stuff, if you have any questions, I think just blurt it out maybe. We'll see if I can answer it and cook at the same time and not cut myself or burn myself. But we chose, when we were talking about the menu, we chose to kind of stick with the theme of seasonal things, and we chose the sweet potato, the humble sweet potato. There's a lot of those very common in fall recipes and menus and things, and we use a lot of sweet potatoes at the restaurant. So we've got a soup and a pasta and a dessert that we're incorporating sweet potatoes in. So we'll get started. I think we're going to try to go till about 11 o'clock, and then we're going to have lunch. We're going to have a few breaks in there. So we're going to go back and forth. You have a recipe guide here with all 3 recipes that we're going to do. So we'll get started. What we're going to do to start this soup, I've got my portable burner here. That works. So we'll do, when I was making out these recipes last night, I'm just going to kind of cook like I know how to cook. These recipes are very exact. I'm not sure that I'm going to be as exact as they are. So we'll start with like a medium-high, medium heat. What we're going to do is sweat down what's called Murfphree, which is some onions and carrots and celery, which is kind of the base for anything French cuisine. And you can think about this soup as a cream soup. So you can take these same ingredients minus the sweet potatoes, and put in regular potatoes or mushrooms or carrots or carrots and apples, pureed up. But a good starter base is the carrots, celery, and onions. So we'll start with some vegetable oil and get that a little bit warm. Vegetable oil is what we use a lot at the restaurant. You can use you can't use any type of oil, sorry. People ask, why can't I use olive oil and stuff like that? Canola oil, vegetable oil, corn oil, soybean oil are kind of neutral oils, but also not so expensive. And they're good for cooking. They can stand with high heat. So they're good when you're doing things that are going to require heat. Like extra virgin olive oil is so flavorful, we don't use that to saute things in because it can dominate the dish. Usually you use extra virgin olive oil for drizzling or finishing sauces or dishes. So we're going to cut up some, usually Murfphree, about 50% onions, 25% carrots, and 25% celery. So we're going to take the top and the bottom of an onion. You can use a red onion if you want. We've got a white or a yellow onion, I guess this is. Cut the top and the bottom off. Cut it in half. I decided to go ahead and peel these sweet potatoes and these carrots. I realized that I grabbed the peeler. It's not the best peeler this morning, which seems to happen. So we're going to cut this onion. There's a lot of different ways to cut it, but to get it, when you're doing soups and things, there's two reasons you want to cut things kind of exact. As you'll see in the recipes, there's small dices, medium dices, large dices. You want it to look good. For one thing, if you're pureeing it up, it doesn't really matter if it looks good, but you want things mainly to cook even. You don't want a big chunk of a potato and a small chunk of potato, and lo and behold, when you test a potato, see if it's done, you're going to grab the small one, and then the big one's still not done. So we're just going to cut some slices in this onion. And then we're going to come back, turn it to the side, and slice right down that. I'm using a serrated knife, which I love more than anything because they grip things more than just a straight blade knife does. So we're going to scoop this back so we don't make a big mess. A towel is my best friend. So we'll start that. Let's turn this down a little bit. And then we'll come back, we're going to dice up this carrot. So when you're sweating things down, you're doing that to kind of bring the flavors out. What you're also doing is evaporating the water, which concentrates the flavor of your vegetables. And then that flavor will be dispersed back into your soup, base, your broth. That's how that all works. And some people, you can caramelize this, which is maybe doing it a little lower temperature, but for a longer period of time. That brings out more of a sweetness. And also imparts the color that comes from caramelization will be imparted back into the soup. Usually you want to do that maybe for brothy type soups, that you're going to want that color of the broth. You're not going to be pureeing that up. So we got our carrot, celery, onions in there. While that's hanging out, what we're going to do is we're going to throw a little salt and pepper on here. What that does is the salt kind of breaks down the cell structure of the vegetables, allowing that water to come out and do what it's supposed to be doing. So we're going to get this burner going over here. And we're going to start our molasses gastrique. So we got this soup. It is a simple soup. But we're going to add some garnishes to it that will add a lot of flavors and texture. So we've got a kind of a medium-high heat. We're going to pour in molasses. The gastrique is a kind of a new dip sauce. Well, it was about 10 years ago, I guess. That's what they were telling me. But it's basically a reduction sauce of something sweet and something sour. So you take usually vinegar and then something sweet, whether it's honey, molasses, sugar. Combine those two. Then you have Let's say we were doing we have an apricot jalapeno gastric on the menu right now. So apricot jalapeno is kind of our flavor, and then we have some sugar, and we have some apple cider vinegar that we combine in there, let that all reduce down and create the syrup. So we're going to pour our molasses in this pot here. And maybe you shouldn't get the pot so hot before you pour molasses in there. We're also going to add, so we have our molasses, which is kind of our sweetener, and we're also going to add a little bit of sugar. The sugar is going to help thicken it, make it more syrupy. We've got vinegar, balsamic vinegar, and then apple cider vinegar. That is going to be our acidity and balance out the sweet and the sour. We're going to give our Murfphree a little stir here. We're going to turn this up a little bit. Get that going a little bit faster. So you can see, we've got this in here. Kind of stir it around so that sugar doesn't kind of settle on the bottom. And we're just going to let that hang out and reduce down to a syrup or a glaze. And we can, maybe this will be our finished product. Okay, so we're going to dice up our sweet potatoes. When you're doing this, as I said, you want to try to get same size so they cook evenly. Sweet potatoes can be a little, I'm going to switch now. Can be a little difficult because they're fairly firm, not as soft as a regular potato. So do be careful. Slicing the sweet potato. It is hard, a lot of the hard fall of winter vegetables. Can be that way, butternut squash, acorn squash, all those things. So we're doing good there, nothing's burnt. I hold a knife, I put my 3 fingers underneath the handle of the knife, and I put my 4th finger and my thumb on the blade, and that gives you a lot of control of the knife. So I cut off a few of the end pieces, and then I'm going to cut this in half so it lays flat, so it doesn't roll around. My fingers don't get underneath there. So we've got our Murfphree kind of cooking. It's starting to get a little color, which is not necessarily what we're looking for, but that's okay, right? So we're going to turn it down a little bit more. We're going to quickly throw in 2 cloves of garlic. Depending on what kind of soup you're making, I think in the recipe there it says you could use coconut milk instead of cream to finish this. Maybe you want to throw in some ginger. If you did coconut milk, you would have actually a completely vegan soup. Definitely. I mean, even this is vegetarian, but if you're lactose intolerant, the coconut milk would be a good substitute. This thing's powerful, this one. Okay, so we're going to finish up this sweet potato here. And then we're going to put all this in. So we've got things kind of cooked down. Things are softening a little bit. I'm sure you can smell some of the flavors here. Always really enjoy that smell of the basic carrot, celery, onions. Bacon's in there, it's even better. But then you throw the garlic in there and ginger, and man, it really perfumes things really nicely.
How much ginger mixture would you add to that?
I would add about the same amount of garlic. I think, what is it, like 2 cloves? So maybe like 2 tablespoons of ginger. You can add as much as you want or as little as you want, obviously with anything.
Would you the dried ginger as opposed to ginger root and grating it?
Dried ginger versus fresh ginger. I would prefer fresh ginger. We're going to use fresh ginger here, but a little bit later. It kind of depends on what you're doing. Something like this, I think fresh ginger. We're going to make the dessert has some ground ginger, dried ginger in it. And we're putting it in that because it's powder form. We don't want any clumps of the ginger in there. So it just kind of depends on what you're doing, not necessarily which one is better. So I believe I wrote down to cover this sweet potato about 2 inches or so with water. You could use a vegetable stock or a chicken stock. I don't know that you want to use a chicken stock necessarily and have your sweet potatoes taste like chicken. But a vegetable stock would be fine. But a lot of times when I'm making soups, I just use water. Because like I said, we're going to garnish it with so many flavorful, textural things. So you can see this here. It's almost coating the bottom of the pan. These gas streaks are really awesome. Any reduction is really awesome because it doesn't usually have any oil or fat in it, and it packs a lot of flavor. But you have to be careful because of the sugar; it will burn very quickly. It's always a fun thing when somebody's running through the kitchen carrying a hot pan, just smoking crazy, and you run by you, and the vinegar just knocks you in the face, and you know what just happened. You forgot their vinegar reduction on the stove. So we're going to turn this up all the way. We're going to add a little bit more salt and pepper. So we add just a bit in the beginning, and just a little bit now. I'm using white pepper. I think white pepper is better in this. People say you don't want to see the black specks, and I don't really care about that. I just think white's a little bit more delicate with flavor. They would be good for this soup. Okay. So, the toasted pecans for this, we don't have an oven here. And so, these pecans, toasted nuts are one of my favorite things. I munch on those all day at work. I work in an olive or a cheese sometimes too. But these pecans, oil, and again, you want to use like a vegetable oil or a neutral oil. You don't want to use extra virgin olive oil for this. A little bit of salt and pepper. You could throw in some cayenne pepper, you could throw in a little bit of brown sugar, white sugar, ginger would be fine, cinnamon, allspice, cloves. You can throw in any flavor that you would like. A lot of times when we do nuts, unless we're going for a specific flavor profile, we'll just do salt and pepper. And you don't want to over-oil them. So just enough to get the salt and pepper to adhere to it. Put them on a baking sheet, put them in an oven. You usually want to do a lower temp when you're toasting nuts because they burn. That's another thing that will fly through the kitchen. You get this big aroma and it's oh, no, what just happened to those nuts? So, you want to toast them kind of low and slow. 250 would even be fine. And when you can just start to smell the nuts in the oven, they're done. If you get a big aroma, they're probably overdone. And they become bitter. These have a nice color on them. I don't know how that color looks in the camera, but you want them to pretty much turn a different color, get a little bit darker. And the oils and the nuts kind of come out, and that's what changes that flavor. It goes from an earthy nut flavor to a really nutty, toasty flavor. So you're looking for that kind of that rawness not to be there anymore. And you can put them in a plastic container, and they're good for a long time. You can even freeze them after they're toasted. Great for a holiday gift or something like that. So let's see what we got here. The thing about gastrics, once they cool, you can see that's coating a little bit more at the bottom of the pan now. We're going to go just another minute, and then we're going to take that off. As these cool, after they're cool, they thicken as they cool. So pretty much whatever they come off the heat as, they're going to be double thick by the time they get all the way chilled. The other thing we're going to top this soup with is some ginger cream. So we're going to use fresh ginger on this. So So there's a lady at the farmer's market, 4K Farms, some of y'all may buy from them. They've got this little pink baby ginger that is really awesome. So to peel ginger, you just kind of roll it around side to side, peel off that skin, slice off that skin. Then we're going to take our friend, the microplane zester. We're going to hang out with this right here. So you got lots of bubbles. It's starting to coat the pan, the bottom of the pan, when you turn it on its side. And as I said, it's going to cool a lot more. It's going to thicken a lot more as it cools. So we're going to take the cream. We have our little ginger knob here. We're just going to grate a little bit of this over the top of this cream. You could make cinnamon cream, you could make nutmeg cream. And what this does, it just pretty much makes it juicy. So you got like ginger juice. So you grate this down, you can see all this pulp that's in there. It's tons of flavor. I'll do just a little bit more here. We're going to add a little pinch of salt, pepper in here. Okay. So, the magic of television, even though we're not on television. We're going to pull out our finished soup product. So you want this soup to come to a boil, and then turn it down to, you don't want to go all the way low, you still want some bubbles and kind of a little bit more vigorous simmer. And cook it till it's tender. Take the sweet potato out and see if it's tender. If it is, I would pour off a little bit of water whenever you're making a cream soup. You want to pour off a little bit of the water instead of just taking all of it and pureeing it up, because it might be too thin. If it's too thin, it's really hard to make it thick enough. But if it's too thick, you can always thin it back out. So you would take out a little bit of the water, start putting your things in your blender, your Ninja, your or burr mixer, stick blender, whatever you have, and puree it up really smooth, and then you can add some of the water back if you need to. We would add cream to this because it's a cream soup. You want to be careful when you're doing blenders, food processing, anything, you put hot liquids in there and turn it on, it's going to go everywhere. So do be careful with that. I love stick blenders. Larry and I were talking about that earlier today. So we're going to plate this soup, then we're going to take a break, and then we're going to go into our pasta next. I think probably everybody wants to spend the most time on dessert. So we'll save the most time for that. So we've got our soup here. And you could, if you decided at the end after you made it, you talked about the ground ginger, dried ginger, you could add, this would be a good time now to add the ground ginger if you wanted to, after it's pureed. Maybe you could have it plain with no ginger on Monday, add ginger to it and a little coconut milk on Tuesday, and you can just keep going around the world. Add maybe a little cumin and maybe some ancho chili or chipotle chili powder on Wednesday, and have a Latin soup, and maybe add a little applesauce and some jerk spice on Thursday and have it Caribbean style. So this is a little bit thick, but it'll be good for what we're trying to do. So I've got our soup. Here's how we'll plate this here. We will take our molasses streak. You can see now it's coated that pretty good. And the reason you want to get it reduced enough is you don't want to bite into that and be still too vinegary. You want that vinegar to turn sweet. even though there's still that balance of sweet and sour. It's not going to overdo it. You can also see it's coating the back of the spoon real nice.
Is this a hot soup or a cold soup?
Hot soup. I don't know that, I guess cold sweet potato soup would be okay, but I prefer it hot. So we're going to drizzle a little bit of this around here. And you can see it's gotten thick enough that it's going to sit on top of the soup. We're going to hope this ginger cream does the same thing. Yeah, it does. Just a little bit like that. And then we'll take a few of these toasted pecans, put right on top there. I never remember parsley when I need it. Maybe you could throw a little sprig of, or a little sprinkle of some chopped parsley on top to add a little green to that. But this is a nice, even though it is vegetarian, it's a nice hearty soup. Sometimes mainly because of the cream. But with the nuts, I think you could, a salad, you've got a full meal here with this. So that's the soup. Cream of sweet potato with ginger cream and molasses gastric and toasted pecans. Do we have, anybody want to ask any questions about the soup before we break and go on to the pasta?
What was the other ingredient in the special quality for the last?
Wait. Go ahead.
What was the other ingredient besides chipotle for the last?
Cumin. Yes, cumin. And they have those at Kroger. That's right by the restaurant. So I probably know Kroger better than a lot of the employees there, unfortunately. I go over there way too many times in a day. But they have the little jars of chipotle chili powder and the dried spices and the ancho chili powder, which those are like the smoked dried, chipotle smoked dried jalapenos, ancho the smoked dried poblano peppers. So if you like either one of those, you know which way to go. They've got both of those in powder form that make it really easy. They're really good. You could use those to shake on fish or chicken or steak or something and cook it with that. They're really nice to have. Haven't been around before. Yeah, question?
Any special type of salt you use or just regular?
I like kosher salt, the coarse ground, so I can really feel how much is going in there. I made a mistake one time when I was starting out. I was reading recipes of kosher salt. I said, well, I don't have that. I'll use iodized salt and use the same exact measurements. And I learned quickly you can't use the same exact measurements. And not quickly, the next day when I had this big thing and all these pickled beets, and boy, they weren't really pickled. They were salty though.
If you can't use salt, what is the closest spice to it that would be
I don't really know if you can't use salt. Salt is not so much for the salt flavor. What salt does is it heightens and brings out all the other flavors that are in there. So salt helps bring out the carrots and the celery and the onions. I think the herbs are a great way. I think you said thyme. I think fresh herbs are great. In that Latin soup, maybe throw some cilantro in there. And I also think these, there's no salt in these. These gastriques are really cool. And you can go online and type in gastrique recipes, and there's probably a blue million of them out there. And they have a lot of flavor. Usually they have some sugar in them, but they have a lot of flavor and no salt. So that'd be a good way to add a lot of flavor without salt.
Do you have a particular brand of the balsamic vinegar that you like?
I don't. We don't use a lot of balsamic as is. Usually we're reducing it. And if you're reducing it down, you don't need to spend a lot of money on balsamic. When we make our own, they have those aged balsamic syrups at the store now. And there's a lot of chemicals in those. I would buy a cheap bottle of balsamic vinegar, put it in a stainless steel pan, and cook it down to a syrup. And you get the same thing. There's not all those added chemicals in there. It's just balsamic vinegar that's reduced. And you don't have to spend a lot of money on what you start out with.
You talked about using a serrated knife when you're chopping. Could you just hold that up so we can take a look at it?
I can. This is not necessarily one I would suggest for home use. It's pretty long. My favorite knife that we have is an offset serrated knife, and I couldn't find it this morning. But the handle and then the blade comes down a little bit, So that, the thing I didn't like about this one is you can't go all the way down. Your knuckles hit the board before the knife does. This is kind of an this is not offset, but it has that principle where you can go the blade all the way to the board without your hands getting down there. So a standard 8-inch offset serrated is my favorite utility knife, and I use it for just about everything. But if you're doing like peeling eggplant, has a tough skin, tomato, the teeth really grab that really good. That's why I like the serrated knives. Anything else?
As far as the science of when you add salt, does that matter?
You know, if you watch those cooking shows, I haven't watched them in a long time. I used to watch them all the time, but they always talk about layering flavors. And if you notice, in this particular thing, I put the salt and pepper a little bit in the beginning to kind of break down the cell structure and let the water come out, and the sugars. All that vegetables are sugar and water. That's all it is. So you get the water out, you get the flavor, the sweetness of the vegetable coming through. So, you know, you start with that, get that going. And one of the things that we always talk about at the restaurant is, what's great if your soup tastes really good. That's great. But if you put the pecans on there and they don't have much flavor, and you put the ginger cream on there and it doesn't have any flavor, and you put the whatever else you're putting on there, it's great if your steak on the plate tastes really good, but you know, make sure your vegetables taste good and your potatoes taste good. And so you want everything to kind of layer and everything to have flavor. I don't know if that answers your question or not. But kind of throughout the whole process.
Are you putting the pecans on the soup as well?
So, sure did.
As a garnish?
As a garnish. You know, a lot of times when you're eating, one of my employees was helping me with this soup this morning. The sweet potato soup tastes like baby food. And I couldn't argue with her, really. But that is kind of the problem with pureed cream soups is sometimes they're just smooth soups. So anytime you add a texture to it, kind of changes that up. If you're doing the Latin soup, you can fry some tortillas, or even break up some tortilla chips and put on there as well to have the crunch of that. Let's take a quick break, and then we'll make pasta. Okay, all right, we're going to get started on the pasta portion. Yeah, we're going to wait for this to get that hot in a second. Okay, so we're making a pasta. Pastas are really easy to make at home. I think a lot of people are nervous about making pastas, but it's kind of about patience and just letting the pan kind of do the work. So we're going to make kind of an Italian, kind of a rustic Italian, maybe somewhat southern type pasta that has the sweet potatoes in there, some kale, which is very popular right now. Any leafy green would work. I wouldn't necessarily suggest spinach. I think spinach cooks down and kind of turns to nothing fairly quickly when it's cooked. Collard greens would be fine. I think turnip greens would be fine. I even think chard would be great. Cabbage, any type of cabbage would be good. We're using a lot of bok choy right now. It would work. I think that's more Asian profile. But we have this kale is really good kale. It's again from 4K Farms, but there's a lot of really, if you ever go to the farmers markets here in town, there's a lot of great products. All of our sweet potatoes, all of our kale, all of our greens right now, our butternut squashes all come from local farms. And it's really nice to have. They're more flavorful, they're more economical, and helping out the community as well. So we'll start with this pasta. And again, somebody asked about this science of when to add salt and all that stuff. We're just going to kind of layer these flavors, and then we'll wind up hopefully with a tasty dish. Somebody asked about where do you buy the knives and what brand. There's a chef store here in town. Actually, there's a few. Chef Mart, kind of on the border of downtown. They have knives. I think it's hard to suggest necessarily a knife. Some of the brands that aren't overly expensive, like $40, $50, Hinkles, Wusthoffs, you can buy. Most people think they're very, very good knives. I don't think I've ever owned a Hinkle or a Wusthoff. But I like the $8 offset serrated knives. The best. Because my problem is I can get a really fancy knife. This is a fancy knife. I had a guy came in at a restaurant I worked at. He was a retired dentist that had done very well in life and decided he wanted to cook on Friday nights at this restaurant I was working at, a very high-end, busy restaurant. As I was leaving, he bought this knife. It's a very nice knife. The problem is I don't keep it sharp. And a good knife is only so good if you keep it sharp. Sometimes. Wish I could have it sharper. But this onion is a lot more loud than the last onion. So we're going to again start with an onion. As you can see, this knife, like I said, is not sharp. We're going to cut this onion just a little bit smaller. But we're going to do kind of the same principle. We're going to let this caramelize just a little bit more so that can again impart the flavor, sweetness back into the sauce for the pasta. So, I guess I didn't finish my comment about the knives. Of course, Williams and Naomi, you can go online as well and order knives. I think there's probably 3 knives, if you just want to get 3 knives. I think a serrated knife of some sort. This is a standard, probably an 8-inch, maybe a 7-inch, just standard straight bladed bread knife. Serrated knife is good for cutting bread. I would get a straight blade, a 6 or 8-inch straight blade knife, and then maybe a smaller paring knife. Most people have that. I think if you have these two, a straight and a serrated, you're all set and do anything you need to do. 6 to 8 inches are kind of the standard size. Always got a chuckle out of those. Some of my classmates at culinary school who'd come in with these 12-inch chef knives. I'm like, how do you get the sword? Knife. So you want to get, when you're doing things like we added this, the vegetables in for the soup, you want to get your pan hot and your oil hot. And the reason you want to do that, if you were to throw especially if you're doing meats or fish or anything, you don't want to put that into a cold oil, because all it's going to do is soak up the oil. You want to get your skillet and your oil hot so that when it goes in there and cooks, it doesn't just kind of soak up everything. Tell I got a little bit of water in this oil. Start to sizzle. I'm going to add a little bit more too. There's water in this too. So might be fun here in a minute. So we're going to slice up 2 garlic cloves. I'm a big fan of garlic. I don't cook as much as I like to at home, and nobody else in my family likes garlic. And I'll throw garlic in just about everything. So I have to really mince it up small so nobody sees it's in there. Don't tell them that though. So when you're throwing your vegetables, meats, chicken, seafood, whatever, in the pan, you want that sizzle. So that you know it's cooking. So we got this big skillet here. And this is, a lot of, in the recipe thing, I talk a lot about stainless steel pans. Somebody asked, do you always cook with stainless steel? We got to talking about copper and all this stuff. This is an aluminum skillet. If I'm doing things that I really, the heat, the control of the heat is the reason you use stainless steel most of the time. They say if you do acidic things like tomatoes or wine or vinegars, you want to use stainless steel because there's some reaction with the acidity of the aluminum. I don't know about all that, but that's what they say. So, but something like this, the stainless steel really controls and disperses and even heats. Aluminum can get hotter. Stainless steel can get hot hotter quicker. Especially if you're searing a piece of meat, it's good for aluminum. Stainless steel doesn't really help with the unstickiness of things. Things will still stick in stainless steel as they will aluminum. But for something like this, when you get hot, for our Italian sausage here, we're going to slice that up. So we've got our pasta, we got cheese, cream, we got kale, we got sweet potatoes. We're going to go ahead and slice up this sausage real quick. That is a really dull knife. I think that's bad when it won't cut cooked sausage. So there's a reaction, I keep talking about a little caramelization or browning. This reaction is called the Maillard reaction, M-A-L-L-A-I-R-D. And that is the reaction that where proteins and sugars get in the pan, get all hot, then they get that caramelization on there. That's the reaction, that scientific reaction that happens. Let's see if we can turn this up a little bit. All right. A little bit of that salt and pepper. Okay, so we have a pasta that's already cooked. I didn't figure we needed to cook pasta. I figured if I cook pasta. There's one little thing people say, you add a little bit of oil in there to make it stick, or you're not, when you're boiling it. I don't know about all that. I think the main thing is once you throw your pasta in the boiling water, put a little salt in there, in your boiling water too, to make it taste good. Once your pasta is cooked, if you're not going to go right into the sauce with it, put a little bit of oil, canola again, or vegetable oil. After it's drained, rinse it with cold water so it stops cooking. Put a little oil in there so it doesn't stick together. So we're using penne. I think I put down that you could use any type of non-noodle pasta. There's a million of them out there. But I think something like this, noodles are kind of hard to eat sometimes anyways. So I think penne or porchetti, gemelli, there's a whole bunch of type pastas out there besides noodle types. So we got our kale. We just chop this up raw. You can put as much kale or as little kale as you want to. Same thing with the sausage and the sweet potatoes. We took our sweet potatoes, peeled them, diced them down, tossed those with a little bit of oil, salt, and pepper, and threw them in the oven to cook those. So we have roasted sweet potatoes, kale, Italian sausage. You can see we're getting a little bit of color on the onions. The cheese that we're going to add, this is going to happen real quick. Once the onions are done, onions are like the longest thing that takes in this dish. If you've got the sweet potatoes already done, your pasta already cooked. I guess I should clarify that. So the cheese I put down, you could do Parmesan or any other hard grating cheese. The Asiago is very popular right now. If there's a ricotta salata, it's a hard sheep's milk cheese you can get sometimes now. It's kind of cool how things have changed. You can get all kinds of good things here in town, pretty much at any store. You also go to farmers markets too. There's a lot of people that are bringing cheeses, some locally produced cheeses to the markets that you can use as well. So if I was doing this and I had all the time in the world, I would probably do this a little bit slower, a little bit lower temperature, and let it take a little bit longer time, which would be if I was at home, let these start cooking real low and slow, and that would allow them to caramelize a lot more and get more of the depth of flavor. And then I would cook my pasta while I'm doing that, maybe cook my sweet potatoes while I'm doing that, cook my sausage. We just bake this Italian sausage. You can use hot or sweet or mild. If you want a little heat in there, use the hot stuff, the hot Italian sausage. We baked this, just put it right in the oven, bake it about 350 for about 15 minutes. You can throw it on the grill if you want to do that. Give it more of a heartier, robust flavor. We're going to throw our garlic in. Garlic is one of these things that that people say, you know, I've never understood, a lot of the cooking shows, they throw garlic in the very beginning. Well, if you do that, garlic's going to burn. So you don't want to throw the garlic in the very beginning. Usually when you throw garlic in, you want something liquid about to go in there right after that, so it stops that garlic from burning. Burnt garlic is very bitter and will impart that flavor back into the sauce. So we're going to throw our garlic in here, toss it around a little bit. And then we're going to add a little bit of water. This says, what, about a cup of water or so? You could reserve your water that you cook your pasta in. That'll help kind of make it a little thicker. You can use a chicken stock or a chicken broth or vegetable broth as well. So we'll go ahead and take and put everything in there now with this water, this liquid. And that's going to allow everything to kind of come together. We won't put our sweet potatoes in, I don't think. We're going to wait a little bit on that. You want the kale to go in and kind of cook down. We're going to throw just another little pinch. And you can see I'm not adding lots. People say, you know, our food may be a little heavily salted. But the thing about cooking fresh is there's not a lot of those. A lot of the salts in there that kind of sneak in. You don't really know where they come from, but they're there. It's high salt content. You look on the ingredient list, and I don't see salt anywhere on that ingredient list almost. So you may think, oh, he's adding a lot of salt, but there's nothing up here that has salt in it already. So you got to watch out for that. This is some of the processed, frozen, canned foods. So this is the water that's in here, as I said, is going to kind of bring all the flavors together, the onions, the garlic, the sausage. It's also cooking down the kale. It's pretty good, smells pretty good. So if you were cooking the pasta and adding it right to the dish, you would want to have everything pretty much done, because you don't want the pasta to cook, be hot, boiling, cooking, and then go straight into a pot of hot cream or hot liquid and toss around and keep cooking more. We're going to add this a little bit, we're going to go ahead and add this now so it can heat through again. Okay?
You got to be using a pretty big pan if you're putting all this together, correct?
You do. I think, what is this, for 8 servings? This will be about 8 servings, so you may not do this much at home. You could do this much at home if you want to. The thing about pastas, they're really, my mom always did this with lasagna. She would make 2 pans of lasagna. We'd eat one, and she'd throw one in the freezer for next week or 2 weeks, whenever. I thought that was always a good idea. Lasagna's nothing more than a pasta, so you could do this with this pasta. You can make a bigger batch, eat some now, whatever you don't eat, freeze. So now we're going to take our cream and put it in here. We'll go with all of it. Another little pinch of salt and pepper. We're also going to put a little drizzle of balsamic vinegar. I use a lot of vinegars and acidic things, lemons, limes, because it also acts, somebody asked about the salt, what you just said about salt. Vinegars and acidic things also heighten flavors. So if you don't need to use the salt, try some vinegars. We talked about the gastriques, but straight vinegars or citrus juice, the sour citrus juices, lemons and limes, will add a lot of flavor as well and heighten the other flavors that are in there. So we're going to try to toss this. So what we did, we just kind of turned the sausage and the kale that was on the bottom over the top, put the pasta down in the sauce, and we're going to let that cook for a little bit. Let that cream kind of reduce down. And you want the sauce thick enough that it coats the noodles. That's the purpose of the ribs in pasta, the holes, the little tunnels in this penne. You want the sauce to get into that pasta. We'll go ahead and throw these sweet potatoes in there as well. So we'll take this and this is when you can run out and set the table real quick. Let this finish cooking and slice your bread or whatever you're going to have with it. We'll let this get good and hot. The cream is reduced down quite a bit. There's not a whole lot in there, but you don't want it soupy. You don't want to put your pasta in the bowl and the sauce will run out and you have kind of these naked noodles sitting on top. So we'll throw the cheese in. We'll throw a good bit of this cheese in now, and that'll help thicken the sauce as well. And we'll save a little bit of cheese to go on top. So while this is cooking down, you might make any questions about the pastas or anything like that. You could add chicken. You could leave out the sausage, no meat at all. You could add roasted peppers. You could add shrimp. Pastas are what you want to make. It's just kind of a question. People don't cook a lot of pasta at home. It seems to me I get that question a lot. But I think they're easy. They're nutritious. With all the gluten stuff, I think pasta is kind of, I won't say got a bad rap, but it's a pretty good meal. I enjoy pasta of all sorts. Yes?
What about like cooking the pasta? You always hear on these cooking shows, there's a term they
Al dente?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I remember in college I would cook spaghetti and it would be like just mush basically.
Yeah. But you want to go, usually whatever the box says, usually penny I think is 9 minutes or so, 7 to 9 minutes. I always go about a minute less than that. And also I think when you're boiling the heck out of things, you may want to turn it down a little bit less. If you got something at a full boil, it's hard to control how much it cooks. So if you turn it down to maybe a lower boil, an easier boil, maybe a good simmer, you can kind of control and stop that process a little quicker than something that's at a crazy hard full boil. But I think going a little bit less than what the box says is a good idea. But you can look at pasta. If you bite into a piece of pasta to test to see how done it is, there's a white ring, a white little line inside the very middle of the pasta. If you see that, that's still the raw pasta. And if you see that, that's really kind of what you want to see. That al dente is to the tooth is what it means. So you still get a little bit of crunch, not that's the right word. A little bit of bite, so it's not mushy. So let's see what we got here. Does anybody got any other questions about pasta or the soup? This wasn't exciting as a soup, huh?
Question over here.
Okay.
What would you use if you want to use the flour pasta, like
To use a non-gluten pasta?
Like I know you could use a gnocchi one.
Well, it depends on what you're not eating the pasta for. There's typically flour in gnocchi, so yeah.
Like if you want to have reduced flour, or maybe just avoid flour in general.
Yeah.
Would you?
I think you could do potatoes. I think some diced potatoes. They have those in the freezer section that are already cooked, ready to go. I think that's a good idea. Gnocchi would work if it's a reduced flour thing. Rice would work. Any type of rice, whether barley is a good thing. Quinoa is a big thing now. I love quinoa. Very, very, very healthy. It's one of those superfoods. There's like, I don't know, 8 or 10 of those superfoods out there. Quinoa is one of those. And I think it's the cool thing about that is it's one of the, maybe the only, or one of the few grains that has complete protein in it. So it would be really great. Barley is another thing that people don't eat much of. I love barley. Maybe not just barley, maybe mixed with some other things. Risotto, barley with risotto is really nice. So we've got this cooked down. We've got our sauce. That cheese really helped. So we'll take this we're going to do, I'm going to move this a little bit closer here. So there's not going to be just a lot of sauce left in this because it's all kind of coating the pasta. So we'll take that there. We'll take a little bit of our cheese that we didn't add in there, put it on the top of here, and we'll be done with that. I think you could also add maybe just another little pinch of this vinegar kind of around the edge of that, just to give it a little more zing. So that's our pasta dish. Okay, we will start on our dessert. It's usually everyone's favorite portion of the meal, portion of the demonstration. So sweet potatoes, as we've seen, can be very versatile. There's still a bunch of different ways we could use sweet potatoes that we're not doing today. But you think of dessert, sweet potatoes, you typically think of sweet potato pie, maybe sweet potato cheesecake, I guess. We're going to make a little, it says sweet potato custard, but it's a little bit more of a sweet potato mousse type thing. Could be made up one day and, oh wow, that's pretty good. So we kind of used it for a little while. So we're going to make several things. It's a pretty involved dessert. So if you have time and patience at home to make this, there's some shortcuts. Instead of making the pastry cream, you could go buy a box of instant vanilla pudding. But making pastry cream is way more fun, to a certain extent, sometimes. The whipped cream, you could use a Cool Whip instead of that. We've got the real things here. We're going to start. So we've got a three-step process here for the actual sweet potato custard or mousse. We've got our baked sweet potatoes, we've got our whipped cream, we've got our pastry cream. We're going to garnish this with a few things as well. One is going to be a pomegranate molasses, which is not really has anything to do with molasses other than the type of the consistency and the color of it. We're going to take, our dessert's going to take the most pots and pans up. How that works that way. So we're going to start over here and we're going to add some pomegranate juice. Looks like we're going to make half of this recipe. So you can buy some pomegranate juice at the store. Kroger's got really good deals right now on this stuff, all different sizes. I guess it's not as popular as it used to be. Pomegranate juice is really sour. I shouldn't say really sour, it's fairly sour. And then the same thing with kind of a gastric, we're taking a sweet and sour thing and making a reduction of this. So we got our pomegranate juice, and we probably should only put half that amount of sugar in here. I have the other half here, so I was measuring this stuff out this morning. Maybe I should have done this last night. Done pretty good though to get all the way to here. My first mismeasure. So we're going to take a little bit of this lemon juice. And that's, as I was talking earlier, it's this acidity is going to kind of heighten some of the flavors in there. All right, it's your responsibility not to let this burn while I'm doing this other stuff over here, because I'll forget about it. Maybe Reverend Bennett with more washes. Okay, so we'll take our pomegranate juice, sugar, and lemon juice and let that reduce down, just like we did with the molasses gastric. We're also gonna make some almond brittle. This is kind of a really quick almond brittle. I don't know if it's necessarily correct by definition of brittle. But we're gonna take sugar and water, which we have the sugar here. We're going to put this in the pot, and this pan, again, stainless steel for this for sure. So you get that even cook. This is the same process you would use to make caramel, homemade caramel, which is really easy. So we're going to take a little bit of water, put in this sugar. Just enough to do, I didn't know I had the burner on already. So you just want to have a kind of a wet sand, water and sugar, kind of like wet sand. I'm going to take a little bit of this, it's very important, sugars and chocolate. Sorry. You want to kind of brush down the sides of the pan. You don't want sugar up on the sides because sugar has crystallization curves, and if the stuff that's in the bottom of the pan gets a certain temperature and the stuff on the sides are a different temperature and that falls back in there, it messes up your temperature things with sugar. So we're going to let that hang out there, and we're going to start our process to make our pastry cream. So you already got our whipped cream done. I typically don't like when using fresh cream. I don't like a lot of sugar in there because cream has a natural sweetness to it. So just a little bit of sugar. Whip this up to a medium peak. There's soft peaks, there's medium peaks, and there's kind of firm peaks of how hard you whip the cream, depending on what you want to use it for. This is kind of a medium peak, maybe a little bit more firm if you're doing meringue, something like that. And we have our sweet potatoes that we've simply baked, and that's all we did with those. No salt, no oil, no pepper. Just a simple bake of those, and they got good and soft. So we're going to take these. And we're just going to peel these sweet potatoes. And then we're going to put them in our food processor. This is a Ninja, is what this thing is called. It is a really cool type of food processor. The thing I like about it the best, it's indestructible. Just almost indestructible. We've only gone through one in the past 6 months. We had to buy a new one. We went through one. Second, that's pretty good as far as food processors go.
What's the difference between a food processor and a blender?
A food processor and a blender? I think a food processor is a little bit more for cutting things. The blade is used more as a cutter, where the blender has that that whirling action that kind of spins things up and tosses things around so it's blended. But the food processor is more to chop things up if you're making like pesto. I think this is going to have a much better chance of pureeing this up than a blender would, because it has the blades are there more for cutting instead of whirling up and mixing things. So we got our sugar water here. It's boiling hard. And what's going to happen is the water is going to evaporate back out. It's going to start to turn an amber color, a golden color. It'll start to smell a little bit like caramel. And then that's when we're going to need to watch it. You don't want to shake it around a whole lot. We're going to jump back and forth with this dessert a lot. You don't want to shake it a lot again because you don't want the sugar to get up on the sides and then fall back down there and mess with your temperature stuff. Okay.
On the sweet potato,
Sure, you can. Sure, absolutely. So we're going to see how this works. Tell you what we're going to do. We're going to add a little bit of this pastry cream. Like I said, pastry cream is really not a whole lot more than homemade pudding, but it's very thick. It's really good too. And we're going to make that in just a second. But it's one of those things that once you start it, you can't really stop that. So we're going to get everything else made before we go on to that. It's good. It did what it's supposed to do. I used to really enjoy the early cooking shows on the Food Network. A lot of time they had equipment malfunctions. I always thought that was kind of funny. Okay. Let's check on this real quick. Doing good there. I'll add just a little more sugar to this thing. So I don't know if you can tell in the video, you don't really want to fluctuate the temperature when you're making caramel. You want that, if it starts high heat, you want to keep it at high heat. You can start low and build it up, but once it gets up to a temperature, you don't want to lower it, change the temperature of it. But this is, I don't know if you can see, starting just to turn a little bit of a golden color. I don't want to turn it up, it's extremely hot. So it's starting to turn a little color, and this is where you really want to watch it, because it can go from a nice, clear sugar water to burnt fairly quickly. Okay. Start a little bit of that sugar, that last bit of sugar that I put in there. That doesn't stick to the bottom. Now we're starting to get, can you smell the caramel at all yet? So you want caramel to get a certain depth of color and flavor, but not too much. So we've got our almonds on our pan here, sliced, blanched almonds. All right, so you can see it's starting to smoke. You can really smell this. We're just going to very carefully and quickly pour this over this. You definitely do not want to stick your finger in here and see if it's hot. It is hot. One of my first restaurant jobs after culinary school, I remember I was a pastry person. I had to burn about 30 creme brulees every night. One of the first times I stuck my finger to see how hot that sugar was. The problem is I tried to get my other finger to get it off this finger, and then both fingers pretty hot. So I just trust that sugar's hot from it. If it's this color, I just trust that it's hot from now on. Okay, so that's what this is. Maybe we should have a little smaller of a pan, but you want to pour that, basically this caramel, over your nuts. You can use pecans, you can use walnuts, any nut you want to use. When we were talking about this menu, what we're going to to do for this demonstration. Somebody suggested you could make this, and I'll show you how to get it off the tray in just a second. And then we talked about something else earlier that you could jar and maybe give away as a Christmas gift, but this would be really cool to give away as a Christmas gift as well. You want to freeze it here in Tennessee. Humidity is kind of an issue. So if you make something like this, it's hard, sugary candy stuff. You want to try to freeze it or get it out of the elements as soon as you can, because the humidity will mess with it. One thing that we've done, one time we did pepitas. Have you ever seen those little green, they're kind of pumpkin seeds. They're a type of pumpkin seed, but they're really good and different. You could toss those little cayenne pepper or cumin or something and pour the caramel over that for something a little bit different and unique. The pan is even hot. Yeah, it's hot. So maybe we'll just leave that there for a little bit. Make it stuck to the plastic. Okay, so we've got our sweet potato and pastry cream. We're going to go ahead and add the rest of this pastry cream. That's what the recipe is going to call for. The batch of pastry cream that we're about to make is this here. This is how much it would end up having.
What's the difference between the regular cream and the pastry cream?
Between the whipped cream?
Yes.
Pastry cream has eggs and thickeners. We're about to make that. I'm going to show you the whole process to make that. I want to get all this other stuff out of the way because once you start the pastry cream, you have to go all the way through to the end of it. I believe our pomegranate molasses are just about done as well. Okay. So we're going to take our sifter. Set some of this out of the way here. Just starting to coat, you can see how much it's reduced. It's just starting to coat that pan. We're going to keep a really good eye on that. If you did this at home, you need to get that unstuck. Add some water, put it back on the range, boil it, and then re-liquefies, and then pour it down the drain real quick. Okay, so we're going to take our sweet potato, pastry cream goodness here.
If you were substituting that with a box of vanilla pudding, would you actually make the vanilla pudding for the box?
Yes. Yes. We're going to put this through this little basket sifter. Because you're making a mousse type custard thing, you want it to be smooth. You don't want it to be, you don't have big clumps of things. "20 seconds. So we'll take this and push this through here real quick. Turn that off. So you could almost eat this right here by itself. It's that good. Okay. Now we're going to make our pastry cream. We will start with milk and cream, or you can use half and half. You can buy just straight half and half. This is what this is. Half milk, half heavy cream. Put the milk, put the heavy cream in here. So this recipe that we're making will make that amount of pastry cream we put in our sweet potatoes already. This is going to be about 8 to 10 servings, depending on how much you want to serve. We're going to put our sugar in here. This wouldn't necessarily fall in the category of a healthy dessert. We're going to do 2 eggs. And 1 egg yolk. Separate these eggs, separate the egg, white and yolk. I'm sure they have a tool for this. I use my fingers, yeah, just like hands. So we'll add 1 yolk in there. Okay, so we have our milk, our heavy cream, basically our half and half, and our sugar there. We have 1 egg yolk and 2 eggs. We're going to put in cornstarch, which is a thickener. Sometimes I really sound like I'm from Paris, Tennessee. Some all-purpose flour. And depending on how thick or thin you want your pastry cream to be, you can adjust those. And then we're going to put in a little bit of vanilla extract. Okay.
So what kind of extract do you use? Does it matter if it's the pure form or imitation?
The imitation will add the flavor you're going for. I think pure is a bit deeper in its flavor profile. I think you could use almond extract, rum extract. With both of those would be good. But I think I like the pure. I use the pure. Spatula. We're going to reuse this spatula here. We're going to stir up our eggs. And our cornstarch and our vanilla. So we're going to do a technique called tempering. We need to have everything over here when we do that. We're going to... Y'all were just going to let that go like that, weren't you? Goodness.
Like my kitchen.
So we're going to temper this. You don't want to throw all of your dairy products boiling straight into your eggs, and we'll cook it. Scrambled eggs. You want to slowly add it in there to kind of bring the two temperatures more in line with each other. Get the eggs heating up, get the dairy cooling down. And another reason to also, I should have showed you this, but another reason to add kind of slow is so you can break up those clumps of the flour and the cornstarch that happen when you put those in the liquid eggs. If you were to just pour all this in here really quickly and then put this back in the pan like we're about to do, those clumps kind of stay in there. That's not what you really want. So if you did this without the cornstarch and the flour, you would have a thing called boiled custard. That seems to be having a much smaller shelf space in the holidays than I previously remembered, which is unfortunate, because that's pretty good stuff. Seems like every year I go to get, my grandmother always got churn boiled custard, and that was like you had to have that Thanksgiving and Christmas. You go to the store now, it's kind of hard to find during the holidays. So we're going to add this back in here. So you, in the recipe, you want to have your pan ready to go. Because you want, once this thickens, you want to get it out of the hot pan and into something that's cooler quickly so it doesn't keep cooking. It's very important that you get to the corners of the pot in the pan, really scrape the bottom so that those eggs or that flour or that cornstarch doesn't settle down there. You also don't want to go high heat, because again, it's kind of out of your control as to how quick it cooks. And it's instant. Once it's going to be like liquidy, and then boom, it's going to be really thick very quickly. It just happens. So it just turned into a pudding really quickly. This, as with most things that have a thickener, whether it's a gas leaf with sugar or pomegranate molasses with the sugar, this with cornstarch and flour, it will continue to thicken as it cools. So ideally, we wouldn't want to use the same strainer that you still have the sweet potato on, but we would use that. And then you want to push this through just the same way to get out any of those clumps that might have happened, whether it's from the cornstarch to flour or maybe a cooked egg or something like that. These I call them basket sifters, are really handy. Have a lot of purposes. Not only to sift flour and things, but to strain things. You can also use the basket spatula to really push things through there like that. A tomato sauce that you really want nice and smooth is great to put through that, and then have a spatula that smooths that out. Okay, so you would take this pastry cream, and I think in the recipe it says it's good to do that the night before, so everything is good and cold when you get ready to assemble everything. You want to cover this on the surface with plastic wrap. I don't know that I put that in there. I did? All right. Cover so it doesn't get a skin on. Anything with cooked eggs like this will get a skin on it, and then you have to take that skin back off. If it does keep cooking too much the next morning, and you left it in your refrigerator overnight, and it has cooked a little bit more, and you have some clumps or the skin is formed on there, you can push it right back through the sifter again and get all that out. Okay? So we'll put this over here, and then we will make our sweet potato mousse. So the things to make a sweet potato mousse you will want. And again, these flavors that you have in here are very much up to you. It is a sweet dessert, not a savory item, like the soup that we made earlier. So you wouldn't want to be too crazy with changing this up. Cumin wouldn't necessarily be good in this. So you just kind of want to stay with the flavor, dessert flavor profiles. So you've got our sweet potato, pureed baked sweet potatoes, and we've got our pastry cream mixed together nice and smooth. We're going to add a little bit of ginger And we use ginger in the beginning, and you asked about ground, dried versus fresh. This is a good time to use the dried so that it won't have any clumps or bites of ginger in there. It's just going to add that flavor. We'll add some cinnamon. I think a little cloves, ground cloves or nutmeg would be good. We're going to add just a pinch more vanilla. If you have a vanilla bean, that would be great. I think also, like we talked about, the other extracts would be nice. And then we're going to take our whipped cream. If you do make whipped cream, make your own whipped cream, it is amazing. I don't know why, but mine always falls. So we'll just whisk it back together. This is nothing more than the heavy whipping cream and sugar in here. I'm going to bring that back a little bit. And this is the two cups of cream, straight cream that is whipped, as this recipe calls for. And then we'll take and do a folding technique so we don't deflate the whipped cream we whipped up. So you want to kind of go through it, bring it over, let it fall back on itself. Getting it all incorporated.
Would you normally fold that with a whisk? Or would you
I do. You kind of grab more, and it's also the natural action of a whisk is to aerate. So not only are you folding, aerating by folding, what you're folding is also aerating at the same time. So that's that. So as you can see, if you have all your stuff together, which the baked sweet potatoes and the whipped cream is very easy. The pastry cream is the only thing, but that didn't take very long. You just have to kind of think a day ahead. You could do this. You could make your own caramel like we made. If you would want to add cream, make it a caramel sauce. You could buy caramel at the store. You could buy butterscotch at the store and make this as well. It would be very easy with a box of vanilla pudding and some bought caramel and butterscotch. Then have this fancy dessert. So we're going to plate this. If you had a whole bunch of these and you wanted to buy a piping bag, but a Ziploc bag works just fine too. Pipe these in if you wanted to do some little design or something. So we have those there. Sorry about that, Larry. We're going to get this off of here. So you can see this is, we didn't get all the almonds covered, but this is glassy, smooth, hard, kind of cracks like glass. That's not a good noise. It's kind of like cutting into a cake first time. Once you get the first piece out, everything else comes out real easy. Probably should have sprayed the pan beforehand. That might have helped.
Blanch the almonds. Do you blanch that like you blanch a
No, blanched is fine blanched. Yeah, they're just sliced almonds. Blanched means the skin's off of them, is all that means. So if this doesn't work out, which we're not going to mess with anymore, well, it's already done one. Use it. Sweet.
Magic of the phone network.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it? So this is what this should look like. So, it depends on what part you want to get. There's some that maybe miss the almonds, it's more sugar, so you could do a little stick of that in there, maybe. Or lay it on the side so you can pick it up and eat it. And then we have our pomegranate molasses. You could also do cranberry juice with this. Do cranberry molasses, kind of cool. And they have all those flavors of cranberry now. I was looking at the store the other day. Cranberry blueberry, cranberry cherry, cranberry, every other fruit out there. So this is a nice, sweet, rich dessert. And this pomegranate molasses is going to add a little contrast to that. So it's not overly sweet and rich. It kind of cuts that deliciousness of that. So that's our sweet potato custard mousse dessert with some almond brittle and pomegranate molasses. Pardon?
Would you use pumpkin instead of sweet potato?
Pomegranate? Pumpkin. Yes, you can. Like the canned pumpkins, what I would use. Yeah, the fresh pumpkins are really difficult, I think, to work with. But I mean, a canned pumpkin they have in the store, yeah, it'd be great. Sure.
Once you mix custard cream with whipped cream, how long will that stay stable without falling?
Not exceptionally long. A few hours. We found pretty much if we were to make some Friday night, it won't be good for Saturday night service. So kind of want to make that when you're ready to eat it, which is good if you know, like we kind of did here, had everything ready, had our pastry cream ready and the whipped cream ready and our base flavor or whatever it would be ready, and then you just stir them together real quick and put it in the container and go with it. You could also take this stuff and make like a trifle. That was one of the other desserts we were tossing around. Put a little bit of this custard in a cup. Maybe make it with the pastry cream or the pudding and the sweet potatoes and not the whipped cream. Then do a layer of the sweet potato pudding, maybe a layer of graham crackers and a layer of whipped cream, and then build that on up like a trifle. Do another layer of the sweet potato pudding and graham crackers. Or maybe just crumble this brittle up and put in between for a layer. Vanilla wafers, anything like that would be good. And then have like a layered dessert type thing. So that's it. That's the demo. So we're going to have lunch. Everything we made here is back there to have lunch with. Thank you very much for coming. And I enjoyed it. You're a good audience.
You really are. And so the only other question is, are you hungry? Mitchell's team has prepared a buffet for us. They will serve you as you go through. Let's thank Mitchell again. And while he hasn't asked me to say this, I'll just go ahead and say that you can. His restaurant is lovely, great for lunch, great for dinner, and I hope that you will frequent it and encourage others to do.
Where's your restaurant located?
1602 West Northfield Boulevard. It's in the Georgetown Park Shopping Center. Same shopping center as Murfphree Salon, Penny's Closet, right off Broad on Northfield. Right next to the Kroger Shopping Center that's on Broad. Got the back end of that strip. Lunch Monday through Friday, dinner Monday through Saturday. Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, let's just say a quick prayer for the food we're about to receive. God, we thank you for the gift of food and also for fellowship. We know that food is awful important to you as you shared so many meals with your disciples, including one that we remember and celebrate very regularly in worship. So God, we pray that you would shine your blessings down upon Mitchell and with all those who work with him. And Lord, we thank you for the gifts that you've given him and those, Lord, that he has shared with us today. So bless this food in the name of Jesus. Amen. Bon appetit.